Good morning and welcome to AI Daily. I'm Farb Nivi. I'm here with my co-hosts Ethan and Connor, and we've got three great stories for you today. The first one is GILL. We'll tell you what that means in a few. Style Avatar 3D and Gorilla. So if that doesn't explain it all, that's why we're here. Let's start off with GILL. Can you tell us a little bit about GILL, Ethan? Did you get a chance to dig into this and what this story is all about?
I did. So GILL is pretty much a method to infuse LLMs with an image encoder and decoder. So to simplify that, what that means is, a lot of times if you're dealing with ChatGPT or you're using these LLMs, they yet to have a clean way to recognize images, to understand images, to speak about images. That whole kind of experience of let me send an image to a chatbot and have it respond to me with another image edited from it or an explanation of that image or some way to inject images into the LLM. So there's a lot of different ways of doing this. We've seen multimodal approaches, people training a large model of images and LLMs, but Gil took an interesting approach, pretty much injecting these image embeddings into the LLM. So it comes with a bunch of kind of interesting use cases. They've shown that even just prompting Stable Diffusion, they're able to get more accurate representations because they're injecting this text encoder into it. A few of their demos, of course, that we'll be showing below, you can see that you're saying, hey, I send a picture of ramen and say, hey, can you make this healthier? And it understands not only the image itself and says, hey, this image is just basic ramen. And then it understands from its own memory, hey, ramen should maybe add some vegetables to it. And it returns to you another image, ramen with vegetables in it and an explainer. So it's an approach to understand images, to respond with images that does not involve a huge multimodal training operation. So I found it really interesting. But Connor?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting because it can both generate new images and retrieve images, which is pretty big. A lot of multimodal models are limited to just retrieval, but again, having the encoder built in means you can send in a picture of a cupcake and say, "Hey, how should I market this?" And then it'll generate a new image of a cupcake with a sign in front of it and a little caption saying, "You should probably do marketing like this, where you show your cupcakes and say your brand for the cupcakes." Pretty exciting having generation built in as well. So.
We're no strangers to LLMs or image generation via stable diffusion. I thought this was pretty cool. The examples they gave were neat. This is, pretty niche type of experience they're trying to go after here.
Mhm.
It You could say it's got some real world applications though, since people text each other a lot and people send each other images a lot. Some people were asking what the differences between this and some of Meta's multimodal work was. I didn't quite see an answer. I think maybe the retrieval and generation piece is a little bit unique.
The
Uh,
code is open source as well, entirely.
what's that?
The code is also open source, which of course Meta's is not. So
Yeah, yeah. The code here is available, I believe, if I remember correctly. Is that right? I think we've got. I think the Style Avatar 3D code isn't quite ready,
com-
but I think this
coming
one is
coming soon is the
coming soon.
We
Yeah,
love coming soons.
that's
always
right.
coming.
Well, I mean, at least they were willing to announce that they were going to actually release the code and not just be like, "Here's a paper and here's some examples and peace out."
Mm.
Right. Well, let's move on to our next story. Style Avatar 3D still sticking around in the image generation world. This one's a little bit different than some of the stuff you've seen before, largely because it's three dimensional. Connor, did you get a chance to dig into this paper a little bit? I found it pretty interesting.
Yeah, I read into a little bit. It's image text diffusion for high fidelity 3D avatar generation. So it can get different poses, it can get different styles, really a whole range of avatars in a complete 3D space that we really haven't seen before possible. And they're very high resolution. They look very good. Some of the demos we'll be showing them right here on the side.
And
But
to give people a little bit of a sense that because they've probably seen things like this and they're just trying to be like, okay, how is this different than, one of these cool avatar generators that uses stable diffusion? What's the big deal? Why is 3D make it any different? Ethan, can you help people understand the importance of the 3D part of it?
Yeah, the 3D is really important. I think if you've ever used Stable Diffusion and you try to get that visual accuracy with 3D, it's very difficult. So a model like this coming out and being able to produce these 3D images is one important, but I think the most important thing to me was the consistency. if you saw their GIF, they have these kind of circling GIFs of these avatars, and they're changing just the hair color slightly. They're changing just the eyes slightly, and being able to point a model in that direction, quote unquote, is really the most important part here to me. We're seeing, hey, can we generate a face in 3D? But then also make sure it is consistent. We're not just generating random kind of stable diffusion prompts. We want this avatar with these attributes. And they even had some interesting ways of kind of mapping attributes to the output of the image generation. So the attribute mapping combined with the consistency of a generated image was the big news to me here.
Yeah, I think typically we've seen these examples of people generating something similar where as a face or as a body is moving through a space, it's kind of wildly changing. And really it might look like it's a video, but it's just a bunch of stills that are connected to each other that kind of make it look like somebody's turning their face or somebody's moving. And then that's not quite what's happening here. Here they're actually mapping out the three-dimensional space to give you a much more consistent experience.
Yes, absolutely.
Very, very exciting for games, for social, where you can have a consistent 3D avatar, which wasn't really possible before.
I mean, it's
Very,
funny, the 2D power of all this stuff and people's ability to sort of, connect a bunch of two-dimensional images together to make something that looks three-dimensional is so powerful that once this 3D stuff comes, people are already like, wait, I already thought we had 3D stuff, but it's like, no, not really. This is a pretty big leap forward. And this is, if you're building games, for example, you can't stitch a bunch of 2D images together to make what looks like a movie. You need 3D assets. So this is pretty powerful to see.
Mhm.
Awesome. Let's move on to Gorilla. I thought this is a pretty profound story. These folks at Gorilla, I can tell, are super excited. They are calling themselves the API App Store for LLMs. They have an AP. Sorry, they developed Gorilla, which can pick from thousands of APIs to complete a user task, even surpassing GPT-4, they say. And it's a connection between the LLM world and the endless API world. And one of the challenges that they found that they had to really accomplish to, pull this off was stop the hallucinations that are prevalent in some of the other models, including GPT-4. So what they have is a very accurate way for you to say, hey, I need an API that does this, and Gorilla will give you that API instead of sort of hallucinating some random piece of information. Connor, have you taken a look at this yet?
Yeah, I took a look at it a little bit. The hallucination is very interesting because based off their evaluation, GP4 actually hallucinates more than GP 3.5, which is very interesting to see.
Yeah, that was interesting to see too. Yeah, I agree.
But the main thing here is that, again, it's another entirely open source. The training isn't open source yet, but the inferencing, the data set, the evals, are completely open source and available for use. And it's very nice to see 1,640 APIs available to be called from what looks like a very capable model. They demoed it in comparison to Apple's built-in Spotlight, and performs way better from calling S3 to calling Hugging Face to calling another 1,000 APIs in there. It looks like a very capable model. So
Powerful stuff. Ethan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we've seen these types of things and talked about similar on past shows, but this is once again I think an example of fine tuning beats prompting. And when this model was fine tuned on all of these APIs, you get a lot better responses with saying, "Hey, I need an image model that can recognize eyes," for example, and you're going to be able to pull directly the API that was fine tuned for this model. You're going to reduce hallucinations. You're going to reduce accuracy. I don't think there's anything too new here, but I am very excited that they've been fine tuning it on APIs. And the most exciting part to me was their architecture around updating the model. So, of course, you don't want to fine tune the model entirely again if you get a new API or there's a model updates or you want to switch from, Torch over to Hugging Face or something like that. So, their model around being able to update these APIs quickly within the model from embeddings, etc., is the huge news here. And I think is what allows them to do, this potential API app store, allows people to contribute to it faster, allows the model to get better, faster and faster without all this retraining. So to me, sum up, fine tuning is better than prompting. It's going to be less hallucinations at GPT-4, but the way they structured this in general is amazing. And I think when you give LLMs the power of APIs, you can honestly do anything.
They're really excited about the App Store API for App Store for APIs. It was
Hmm.
Really cool to see a team that's clearly excited about what they're working on.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's some three deep tech stories for you here today. The pace of development in AI is not slowing down anytime soon. What else are we all seeing out in the wonderful world of AI, Connor?
Yeah, I saw a little tweet that went kind of viral. It was first, it was linking another tweet that went a bit viral on the 30th of March, just earlier this year, where one of the where a press correspondent asked the White House press correspondent, like, "Hey, what do we think about AI risks? What's the problem here?" And everyone else in the room just laughed, and the White House press correspondent was like, "Nothing to worry about." And then that was compared to a clip from just yesterday, where he asked essentially the same question, but everyone in the room was very silent, very grave faced, and she had a very serious response about how it's a serious risk they're looking into. So the contrast of just a couple months ago versus now is at least nice to see out of the White House.
The doomer
Yeah, I
memetics.
think. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the doomer memetics of the White House.
Yeah, there was another big announcement. This was what I was going to talk about. There was another big announcement yesterday. A bunch of experts signed a piece of paper saying that there is another extinction level crisis in our hands. And so it's important, apparently, that there is always an extinction level crisis that people are concerned about and worried about. God forbid you go about your short life enjoying it. You need to be juggling three different extinction level crises happening at any given time. And what I really found interesting about yesterday's was that there was clear concerted effort. Not only were they going to announce this sentence that they've all agreed to is a sentence, they're also going to have Wired, Vice, Reuters, you name it, all also talk about how experts, we can make sure that we use the word experts because they never make any sort of mistakes. Experts have said a sentence, and we have to write these articles about this sentence that experts have said is a sentence. It all seems to me like a lot of self-serving nonsense. I don't think the average person understands or cares about any of this stuff. Maybe they're trying to get the average person to care about this stuff, but what's the average person going to do about it? The average person is going to stop super intelligent AI from exterminating all life on Earth. If it would be a great movie where The Rock plays this average person who has to stop the super intelligent AI from exterminating life on Earth. So
I
I
think
look,
that
I'm
they
looking
made
forward to this.
the a few times, a couple
Yeah.
decades ago. So
What's that?
I
Skynet.
said they made this movie a few times over the past
Yeah,
few decades.
they'll keep making the movie. The funny, if you're reading this organization's charter, they're mentioning some of their major concerns, and one of them is enfeeblement. Uh, and they actually quote in their own charter, they're like in the movie Wall-E. So this very serious organization's very serious charter is trying to make sure that Wall-E doesn't happen.
I mean, Wally was a pretty serious movie. I definitely felt something watching it. So I don't know
Yep.
about you
I don't
guys.
know, the people in Wall-E seem perfectly happy to me. I don't know, just leave them alone. Ethan, what are you seeing?
Yeah, no, I saw the exact same thing. The Center for AI Safety. I'll read off the statement, which was mitigating the risk of
Well, that was your
extinction.
story for today too?
Yeah,
Okay.
mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. Um, honestly, ditto pretty much everything you said, Farb. I think they have gathered the signatories of, pretty much every big person in the space, and they want to continue the narrative that this is something we should worry about and think about. And, I may not hate it on as much as you, but it's very directionless right now. And they want to position this as something extremely dangerous, which I think is dangerous in and of itself. So we'll continue to see how it plays out, but ditto much of what you said.
I think
I
you
think
said it well. It is dangerous, and the way they're talking about it may also be dangerous, and the way they're going about talking about the danger may also be dangerous. Connor, what are you saying?
I think the framing is a bit dangerous, but of course, like existential AI risk is something Mr. Altman cares about, and I'm glad it's something the White House cared about personally. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Hey, well, we all have our opinions, right?
we all have our opinions here. I have a feeling we'll be here talking about AI daily for the next 1,000 years.
of course.
So
If not us,
Whether
synthetic us.
yeah, if not us, synthetic us. So here's to the AI dreamers over the AI doomers. Thanks for joining us today for this excellent episode of AI Daily. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you all.